I'd like to share with you what I would call the power of nothing. I spent a lot of time talking in these videos and in my articles about the power of something, essentially how you can create in use of language and the way you conceptualize and create meaning that generates experience and produces behaviors and actions and realities and forms in the world that makes shit happen. And I love that. It's a huge part of my life. But it's half the story, right? The other half, the foundational half, the half that comes before that, the half where I actually spend most of my energy, time, and attention personally, is on nothing. What I mean by nothing is the pursuit of nothingness, creating a foundation of experience and knowing and being that is connected to silence, that is connected to the void of meaning, that is in a place of witness of all the activity of thought and mind. And there's two major values that I can speak to right now anyway of nothing. The first and most primary value of nothing, and I'll continue to try to explain what I mean by nothing as something, which is really nothing. But the primary value is the capacity of nothing to dissolve conflict. And so what I mean by conflict, we'll say internally for an individual, when an individual person like myself, like yourself, has things in their mind that are conflicting them, things in their body that are conflicting them, our response as a human being is to try to figure it out. There's a problem, so we try to solve it. We try to think our way out of that box. And sometimes we can come up with solutions that can get us out a little bit. But the problem with any solution to a conflict is that it inadvertently validates the conflict. If you trying to figure out whether A or B is the right path and you finally decide that it's A, then the struggle between A and B is validated as a real struggle. And so that you're not actually creating more freedom by making a choice between two things that you're feeling conflicted by. It may look like it because now you're out of that situation onto the next, but you've left in the trail in the dust of that decision, you've left the possibility for conflict again between two things you struggled between. So I know this is very conceptual, but try to stay with me because the most important point here is not the essence of the content. It's not the content, it's the essence of what I'm trying to communicate. So what I mean by nothing is experiencing emptiness, experiencing a quiet and still mind. It's even beyond experiencing your breath. It's being at a place that's so still that an expansiveness opens up. And as your mind quiets and as you become still, an expansiveness opens up. There's the sense that you're connected to something greater than you. I say SGTM, something greater than me. Whether or not that's absolutely true or objectively, I don't know, but doesn't really matter because I'm experiencing that as the case. Maybe it's my pineal gland getting some energy and it's creating this illusion that I'm connected to the universe. I don't know. Philosophically, intellectually, it makes sense that I'm part of a whole. Experientially, when I'm in that state, I feel connected to and part of something greater than me. That's enough for me to go with that as a conceptualization. And so in that place of total stillness and silence, through witnessing the activity of mind, through watching the continuity of breath, through allowing thinking to come and to go all on its own, when there's stillness and when there's silence, and when there's nothingness arising, I am experiencing the activity and still things arise, but I'm experiencing it in this place of observation more than engagement. And it's a weird way of saying it as an observation, because I don't want to start to identify as the observer, which becomes a new piece of content, but there's an experience of observing that's happening. And simply observing, bringing that nothingness and that observing to bear on something, some conflict, something that's going on in my mind or body, simply observing that conflict and watching it without the need to solve it. that final step back from the need to solve conflict, but just watching the conflict happen, is a very powerful step, because it says that I am no longer part and parcel to this activity of conflict. And interestingly, what keeps conflict alive is us being part and parcel of that conflict by saying that we need to resolve it. The need to resolve conflict entrenches and exacerbates conflict internally and externally. If you were to take the same thing and talk about it in a group dynamic between individuals, exactly the same thing. But anyway, we're staying with an individual. So me having the idea that I need to solve this conflict and problem in me, it creates the conflict and problem. It keeps it alive. But when I can actually be still and know that I am connected to and part of something greater than me, and I can just observe conflict as a happening, not as something I'm doing or need to get myself out of, what happens is that observation actually becomes a dissolution, observing becomes an act of dissolving. And we could look at it as saying you're doing it. We could look at it as saying because you're not involved, something greater than you is doing it. We could look at you saying because you're not involved and nothing is occurring, it's just settling down by itself, because everything in nature, when it's not touched, it relaxes and settles. I kind of like that one the best. It works well with the idea of connecting with nothing. If I stop shaking up the snow globe, the snow just settles down. Everything relaxes, becomes still. And so for me, the primary way out of any internal struggle is to be still and know that I am nothing, and to be silent, to move into the act of observing, not as the observer, but as the activity. And in that, my decision to not find a way out or to solve is actually a stepping back that gives birth to this disentangled observing, and this allows things to relax. Everything settles down. And in that settling, there's a peace. And then in that space of that peace, in the space of that silence, in the space of nothing comes the second value, the second most valuable thing that nothing has to offer. And that is, from nothing comes something always. Something always comes from nothing. You can't stop it. In the space of silence and breath and nothingness, something will be born. An idea will come forth, a feeling, an impulse, a vision, a smell, a sound. Something will occur and something will happen. And typically, these things that occur and that happen from nothing have a wisdom to them. And they're also typically associated with something that's relevant in our life in that moment, and it may even be relevant to what was previously a conflict and is no longer a conflict because it's dissolved, but it still may be an active context. There still may be a situation, there may be a potential in your life, a conflict between you and another person that now no longer feels like a conflict, but there's still something to be done. There's still content and context out there in the world or in you. And an idea will come to you, a possibility, a vision, an action, somebody to call, something to do, something to write, a place to go, something to make. Something will come from nothing, and that something is something greater. Typically, I find something greater than I can ever access through thinking and reasoning in the face of a conflict or a problem. And I know this sounds really spacey unless you've experienced it, and almost inaccessible because it's so conceptual and philosophical. And that's the bitch of it, because it's a little bit beyond language. And it's the other half. For me, half is about production of language, the concept and meaning that creates form in the world. And the other half is moving in the inverse, away from it, away from it, away from it. The further you get, the more value and bliss and peace and power and love and wisdom is there, and the less language there is there to describe it. So it's a bit of a crazy paradox. And this is why I have this on my wall. One of the many reasons I love the Taoist symbol, but especially trees and roots growing into each other. This is life. It's the tree of wisdom, the tree of knowledge, the dance. Form and formless, something and nothing. If you have had experience with this, I'd love to hear from you. Please drop a comment down below. Let me know what resonates, what you see, what's familiar in this, how you access nothing, how you become nothing, and what that does for you, whether or not you have experienced that dissolving conflict and relaxing you and creating peace, and also whether or not nothing for you is the ground from which something of the most value, the deepest wisdom and intuition arises and emerges. I'd love to know that, how you do it, how you experience it, how you speak about it. And if this isn't happening for you and you like the sound of it and you'd like to learn to access it more, then ask a specific question if you have one. But it's more of just a broad interest, and I'd like to invite you to join Creating School. You can go to creating.school, click the link, and read about what we do there. Essentially, this is half of the work. Half of the work is cultivating a connection to nothing. And the other half is cultivating a way of connecting to something that we want and love. Now, cultivating a way of seeing yourself, a way of seeing the world that actually brings these wisdoms, these ideas, these potentials. What I would love is this relationship or this money or this life, and bring it into form through our speaking. It's the dance. And if you want to dance, join Creating School. I would love to dance with you. Most of all, 11 minutes into this video, I'm just grateful that you're here. I love you. Thank you for watching. My name is John Patrick Morgan, and I will look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.